help me make this day a song of praise to you. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps.
To be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham va'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam. Oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving, I'll be a for you.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenaleini nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan neged zorai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya ach tu v'chesed yirdifuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim lo echsar
Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Lehamidenu malkeinu Ashkivenu Adonai
Hine Matov, and there'll be a little surprise in there for Rosh Chodesh Adar. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad, 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 shevet achim gam yachad. Misha, 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 nichnas adar. Misha, 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 nichnas adar. Misha, nichnas adar, marbin besimcha. Misha, nichnas adar, marbin besimcha. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad, 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 Misha nichnas adar.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and how wonderful it is to be here together as one family. I'm Rabbi Sarah Berman, and it is an honor and a pleasure to be here with our cantorial intern, Jenna McMillan. Jenna, who just sang so beautifully for us, is not just a singer. She is also a wonderful and thoughtful soul who gave a beautiful sermon to our community last night. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I hope you'll go to our YouTube channel and watch. And Jenna, who is, of course, a cantorial student, the way that she brings us into Judaism is through song, is through voice. And she spoke about how we can still create that feeling of raising our voices together in song, even in these times when we are apart. And that's something that we're focused on this morning as well. Welcome to everybody who is in our Zoom room with us, all of our Mishkan regulars. Shabbat Shalom. It's great to see your faces. And welcome to those who are joining us on our live stream on all of our various platforms. So I invite you, if you are watching on our Facebook platform, to share in the chat box one word that describes the past week for you. And if you are joining us in our Zoom room, I invite you to use the chat box here to describe, oh, nope, I can't use the Zoom room, the chat here. But wherever you are, I invite you to use the chat feature on Facebook to share with us one word that describes the week that you've had. We will, whether you had a great week, whether you had a difficult week, we are here together today, and we will get to spend the next hour and plus raising our voices in song and in study together. So I can't wait. Jenna, I think that we are continuing together with Matovu. If you need the words, if you want to know where we are in our service, I invite you to visit centralsynagogue.org/livestream and look for the Mishkan order of service and text study, or the link to Mishkan Tefillah, the Reform Movement prayer book. We continue on page 74 of Mishkan Tefillah with Elohai, or with Moda Ani, Matovu. Matovu.
La
my God, thank you for creating me, for giving me life, and for allowing me to reach this day. Page 78. Elohai, Neshama, Shinata Tabi, Elohai, Neshama, Shinata Tabi, Tehorahi, You created me, you made me, you breathed me into life. You created me, you made me, you breathed me into life. Elohai, Neshama, Shinata Tabi, Elohai, Neshama, Shinata Tabi, Tehorahi, We continue with the chanting of our daily miracles on page 80. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor.
Amen. Thank you, God, for our everyday miracles and blessings. For happy are those who dwell in your house. We continue with Ashrei on page 97. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha sela. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha sela. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od
I already feel different this morning, calmer, more grounded, ready to bring in the full joy and relaxation of Shabbat. And so much of that is Jenna's voice, and so much of that, honestly, is seeing all of you singing in kol echad, in one voice with us. What a treat this is. Now that we are prepared, I invite you, if you are able, to rise for our call to prayer, Baruch, on page 108.
Please be seated as we continue with our Yotzer or prayer on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol.
In the beginning, even then, a new light was sown for the righteous, a promise that your light would become the catalyst, first for order and then for hope. Author of language and light, help us to use words as you have, to cast light into dark waters, to draw out justice and truth.
Or chadash al Zion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu mehina leora Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Avad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We continue now with our Song of Freedom on page 122, Mi Chamocha. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal, 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 Israel. Please rise for the Amidah. Page 124. Adonai zefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasei Avot v'Imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch Ata Adonai, Magid Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor le'olam Adonai, B'chayei metim Ata Rav leHoshia, Mashif HaRuach u'morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim b'Chesed, B'chayei metim b'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim v'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Bal Givurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaya, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata lechayot metim, Baruch ata Adonai, Mechayei hametim. Yai la 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 la, ya la 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 la, yai la 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 la, yai la la, Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, K'shem shmakdishim oto b'shmei marom, Ka'katuv al yad nevi'echa, V'kara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Meloch al haaretz, Kevodo, Ahadir Hadireinu, Adonai Adoneinu, Mahadir Shimcha, B'chol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Bimkomo, Echad hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu v'hu Yashmienu, V'rachamav le'einei kochai, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Zion, Lidor vador. Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. We continue now with silent prayer. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru
today is the first day of Adar, our month of joy, our month of celebration, our month of Purim. So we get to celebrate the new month, and this month that we are praised who increase our joy in this month, as Jenna sang in our opening song. So on this first of the month, of this joyous month, we join in our service of celebration, our service of praise, Hallel, together. Again, if you are able, I invite you to rise and turn to page 270 in Mishkan Tefillah.
B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez, Hayta Yehuda lekodsho, Yisrael mamshelotav, Hayam rav vayanos vayanos, Hayarden yisov leachor, Harim naketu chelim, Gevot kivnei tzon, Ma'alecha hayam kitanus, Hayarden tisov leachor, Harim tirkedu chelim, Gevot kivnei tzon, Milifnei Adon chuli aretz, Milifnei Elo Yaakov, Ha'ochi Hatzur Hagamayim, Chalonish Lemaino Mayim, B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim, Beit Yaakov me'am lo'ez. Page 274, Ozi v'Zimratya. Ozi v'Zimratya, Vayhili Lishua. Ozi v'Zimratya, Vayhili Lishua. Ozi Page 275, Pete Huli. Pete Huli. Sharei Tzedek. Pete Huli. Sharei Tzedek. Avovam Odeya, Avovam Odeya, Avovam
You stood for Hallel. I invite you to take a seat. We turn now to our Torah moment, our Torah learning together. The text study can be found on the second page of our order of service, which is at centralsynagogue.org/livestream. It's the link under the Mishkan. And as we turn to our Torah study, I am going to be inviting the members of our Zoom room to unmute yourselves and respond to some of these texts, to read some of these texts and then respond to them. So as we dive into our Torah study together, first let us bless, and then I will introduce the portion itself. So I invite you to join me on page 86 with the blessing for Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. So this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim, is an introduction to 53 different commandments. It is chock full of commands, and they really run the gamut from the more mundane details of daily life through the large ethical choices that we need to make in our lives. And sometimes within single commandments themselves, there's that entire span. Today is, or this Shabbat is the National Council of Jewish Women's Reproductive Rights, Reproductive Justice Shabbat, Repro Shabbat. So we are going to be looking at what this portion has to say about reproductive justice. I see a number of faces, and if there's somebody who would like, I will share my screen just in case not everybody can see the text. But before I share my screen, I wonder, is there somebody in our Zoom room, indicate by waving your hand at me, who would like to read the text out loud for us? Phyllis Friedman, I love when you volunteer. So let's get you unmuted. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen.
When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined, punished, according as the woman's husband may exact from him. The payment to be based on reckoning. But if other damage ensues, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise.
Phyllis, thank you so much. And so you can see my questions here on the screen. What does this passage describe? And what does it teach us about the conception, the ancient Jewish conception of the status of a fetus? I will stop my screen share. I hope everybody has a copy in front of them or a good memory. And I invite you to address this question. First of all, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What does this passage describe?
It's an accidental miscarriage because of two men fighting, and what is the punishment for such a thing, which is based on intention and not intention and in general.
And it's what is the punishment for two potential resulting situations. The first, that the woman miscarries, but there's no damage to her other than that. And the second, that there is damage to this woman, that her life is ended or that she is harmed in a serious way. And there's two different punishments described here. Paula.
Yeah, I was going to raise my hand. So I was struck by this, and I was thinking it through, because you get it, a hand, you chop off a hand, an eye, poke out an eye. But does this say that you kill your opponent's wife? And then what does that say about women? so it's interesting. Where do you find recourse that where there's an equivalency in this?
Yeah, well, and I think what it's talking about, Paula, is that if the woman is fine other than the miscarriage, which of course is a huge damage to her and herself, but that only the fetus is damaged, versus if there's serious damage to the woman. If there's serious damage to the woman, the man who caused that, he is the one who is eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. And if the damage is only to the fetus, there is monetary payment that ensues. So maybe before we continue our conversation on this, let's read what the Babylonian Talmud has to say. Again, if somebody would like to wave at me if they want to read this text. Otherwise, oh, great, Audrey, wonderful. So I will share my screen again so that everybody joining us can see. Audrey, if you would read our Babylonian Talmud passage. Oh, let's get you unmuted first.
Mute, okay. And concerning this, Rabbi Elazar says, the verse is speaking of striving to kill, where each man was trying to kill the other. The proof is that it is written, but if other damage ensues, then you shall give life for life. And if there was no intention to kill, why should he be executed? And even so, the merciful one states, but no other damage ensues, he shall be punished, teaching that he must pay the monetary value of the fetus to the woman's husband. Yeah.
So if this helps us illuminate the sense of what two very different generations thought about the value of a fetus and the value of a person's life, a man or a woman. What are your impressions of this passage or of the two passages working together? Again, I'm going to stop my share so I can see more people's faces. And again, I hope you have that text in front of you. Gail, please.
Thank you. I agree and have that feeling of that Paula has of the sort of a one-to-one, life for life, eye for eye, always makes me feel awkward. And I experience the embedded sexism that's in it, where we sort of treat women like chattel and we sort of treat the fetus loss as a guy's problem and that stuff. I dislike that. But I also want to note, and I thank you, Sarah, for raising that for me, there's a deep alignment here with Roe v. Wade and a sort of notion that at some point prior to birth, pregnancy is not the equivalency of an existing life that is compensated in that fashion, and that women are not mere carriers of, I mean, I understand the whole notion, I'm not going there, but there is that alignment with Roe v. Wade, and there is a sort of integrity to women in that, as much as it's embedded in other functions that are uncomfortable for me. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Gail. And thank you for saying it directly, the connection with Roe v. Wade, that you can't, in Jewish religious law, Jewish religious worldview, a human life doesn't begin at conception. That is not the moment. Yeah, Audrey.
Well, I was about to say that nothing in either passages leads me to believe that they felt that the fetus was alive.
Right.
Because it's a monetary, but it's not all the other eye for eyes.
Ed, I see you gesturing as well.
Since Roe talked about the third trimester as being different, I don't think Jewish law accepts that. I think Jewish law is waiting for a birth. And so, yes, I don't think the fetus, at least the way I understand it from these texts, is a person.
So I see Monica, Susan, and Audrey.
I'm kind of confused just by sort of the horror of a foot for a foot and a hand for a hand. It seems so weird because Jewish law is all about choosing life. You know, like all the rules are choose life. And obviously, if something, God forbid, happened to a woman that she miscarried, why would you then choose such harsh kinds of, I guess, remuneration for the crime, whether it was intended or not, to be like losing a limb or something like that? Why are those two things together?
Right. So, I can actually answer that question. There are two situations that are being described here that I want us to make sure we don't conflate. If there is damage to a fetus, there's monetary punishment for the person who inflicts that damage. But if the damage is to the woman's life, essentially what our commentators glean from this is that, you know, when the text says, if other damage ensues, that means if the woman dies, then the person who caused that damage, or if, you know, she is injured in another limb, then the parallel damage is done to the person who caused that. That if her life is taken in this fight, then the person who took her life, their life is taken. But before we fall over ourselves with this ancient form of, in reaction to this ancient form of justice, the rabbis then spend, you know, 1,500 years describing all of the ways that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a foot for a foot doesn't literally mean that if a tooth is knocked out, you have to knock out the other guy's tooth. That life for life doesn't mean that if you kill a person, you are liable yourself to die.
What does it mean?
We spend 1,500 years trying to describe and explain why it doesn't mean what the text says it means, because the rabbis find it so abhorrent that there would be bloodlust like that. So what they end up arguing over and over and over, this is in Talmud, this is beyond Talmud in law codes, many of the law codes up to the present day, that when it talks about life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, by putting that in conversation in this very parasha with monetary punishment, that what they're saying is that if you take a life, then you must exact from the person who caused that act, you must exact for them the monetary value of the life that was lost. If they knock out a tooth, you must exact from them the monetary value of that lost tooth. The rabbis find many ways to work around the literal meaning of the Torah portion we're presented with in order to lessen the punishment, lessen that bloodlust, while still allowing for there to be punishment.
How would you determine what the value of a limb is?
So that's not our topic today, but there are, I mean, there are scales. I can't say that there's formulas, but there are scales. Monica, they thought that through. There is an answer to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Susan Eglovich, were you gesturing to make a comment? You're still on mute, so let's get you unmuted. Great.
Well, I wasn't exactly gesturing. I was just kind of, maybe I'm taking this too literally on the first paragraph. It just hits me that the husband decides the monetary value, like what's the deal there, and that the woman and the husband, and that they're just saying that the husband exacts the value of the loss. That kind of like, that just shot at me really bad, and I don't like that phrase.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm misinterpreting it or that's pretty literal the way it's written there.
And I can't say that you're misinterpreting it, because Torah was written in a patriarchal system and society. So I think you are reading the plain meaning of it. You are reading what is on the page. Torah, though, isn't static, and we get to interpret it in every age, exegetically by trying to pull out of the text what's already there, and also eisegetically, we get to read our own lives into the Torah text. So what you are seeing sits very uncomfortably in a world that is moving more towards egalitarianism, more towards equality for all genders. And yeah, it's hard. We need new commentary. We need our own commentary to help square this.
Or at least let it be a joint decision between the woman and her husband and not just leave it up to him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just kind of, I don't know.
I think, Susan, you have just added to the body of Jewish commentary on this text in a really meaningful way. Yes, it can be and it should be. Audrey, I saw your hand also.
Yeah, I keep going back to the fetus. Someone's got to talk for the fetus. Even today, what we would call a child, it's not considered a child and a life for a month or more, depending on, I believe it's the gender of the child. So if a child dies even in the first month, it's considered not a life. So that's what is precisely going on here. It is not considered a life.
And Audrey, there couldn't be a better segue to our final text, which is a contemporary text written about a year ago, I think, 2 years ago, half a year ago, by the president of the National Council of Jewish Women and their rabbinic, their rabbi in residence, specifically for reproductive justice. Is there somebody who would like to read our final text? Again, I'm going to share my screen, so you don't need to have it in front of you. I'm looking for somebody to wave at me and volunteer to do this. Oh, Arden, thank you so much. Let's get you unmuted. And I would love for you to read Sheila Katz and Rob Ruttenberg's collection.
Other authoritative Jewish texts further emphasize that the fetus does not have the status of personhood, describing it as mere fluid for the first 40 days after conception and part of the pregnant woman's body thereafter. This led some rabbinic authorities to rule that, as Rabbi Jacob Emden did in the 18th century, there is no reason to be lenient in permitting an abortion. Only so as
there is reason to be lenient in permitting abortion.
Oh, sorry. There is reason to be lenient in permitting abortion, only so as to save her from woe, or as Rabbi Eliezer Waldenbergs did in 1978. Abortion is a valid choice when not terminated might cause suffering and emotional pain. This is not just a matter of Jewish law, but of Jewish values. We consider pikuach nefesh, preserving life, to be one of our most critical commandments, and more broadly, building a just society to be of ultimate concern. And with abortion access, safety, justice, freedom, and lives are at stake.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arden. So the questions on the page are really the questions that I want us to consider. What is the conclusion? Because we've just been talking about beginning of life. What is the point of the beginning of life, and what is the status of the fetus? And now shifting into, as my teacher, Dr. Alyssa Gray would say, where the rubber hits the road, what conclusion do Sheila Katz and Rabbi Ruttenberg draw from the Jewish texts about abortion rights from our tradition? And also, what conclusion do you come to? For the last time, I'm going to stop my share so I can see your faces and see who wants to respond here. Yeah, Paula, great. And then Phyllis, I see you both.
So I think if you look at the continuum of the ethical questions around abortion, this takes care of a big part of the mother versus fetus question, I think pretty unequivocally. If it's a question of the mother's life or the fetus's life, there's clarity here. I think there still is this gray scale, though, when they talk about emotional suffering. So if you have too many children and can't afford another, there's many other issues that come into play. If the child would live and maybe would be viable, but maybe there's something maybe wrong, where does that line stand? So it is clarity, because I think the most agonizing question for a husband, say, or for a family, is when the mother's life is in jeopardy, and the question is, what about the potential child? But I still think it leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Thank you, Paula. Phyllis, let's get you unmuted.
Well, I always bow to Paula's words, but and her point being that it's the woman that takes prime concern, and then the woman and the family, and the fetus is a fetus, not a child.
Yeah. It's about the primacy of the rights of the pregnant person.
Yes.
Yeah. Gail, I see your hand, and Eric, I see yours. So Gail and then Eric.
I'm going to try to keep my thought condensed. And David, pay attention. There are some psychoanalytic thinkers who talk in this same way, who think about no separation just psychologically between a baby and a mother, even out to the first 40 days. And I could blah, blah, blah you for a long time about it. But I also find that interesting as well. To even Paula's point, when separation is something, it's like a lifelong-y thing. And at what point we create this thing, life, aliveness, independence, is really, really complicated. And certainly it keeps getting activated in the abortion question. Birth at plus 8 days, birth plus 40 days. It's a little tricky.
Very tricky. Eric.
God breathed, had the Ruach Nefesh into the dust, and he created Adam. When is the Ruach Nefesh enter the fetus? I don't know, because I don't know when his programming starts. Maybe in the womb, maybe through his talents and everything. Because after reading Asperger's Children by Edith Schaeffer, telling that the Nazis wanted to abort the autistic children because they had no viable gift for society. And I got a little not miffed, but scared that I could have been aborted and in that time, and I didn't know what my potential value to society was, and a joy to my parents. But that's
and Eric, I would even say that you are a joy to your community as well. You have so many gifts, and we appreciate them. The rabbis would have said that the Ruach Nefesh, that it's not all, of course, because when Judaism says one thing, it also says generally the direct opposite. But the majority of the rabbis responding to that question would have said that Ruach Nefesh, that breath, is breathed into you after birth, when the child takes a first breath. And then arguably where their life, their livable life begins after that. But I think that as the rabbis were talking about that, what they were focusing on was in some way protecting parents when a baby wasn't able to live beyond a certain point. I don't know how frequently they're talking about that kind of I don't know how directly they're talking to your concern, because of course this isn't something that is top of mind for them, but it is for you, and I appreciate how personal this is for you.
Yeah, because I don't know what my gifts were to society.
Yep.
But I'll tell that too offline if you want to. But because I don't know what my person's gift to society would be.
Right.
But that's offline for you.
Yep. Well, again, and we so appreciate your gifts. Richard, I'll turn to you, which might be our final comment.
Yeah, I think we're raising a number of really complex ethical questions here. I think the Jewish text allows us individually to be comfortable Jewishly with a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy based on her needs. That Judaism sees the fetus as property rather than life. But larger questions still loom. We still have to struggle, for example, when a couple decides to terminate or not implant an embryo because of a genetic defect, or when a baby in the first trimester is found, or fetus in the first trimester is found to be mongoloid, or to have what is going to be a disastrous first year of life, we terminate those pregnancies. And we struggle ethically with, quote, the rights of those unborn, but move on with accepting that the rights of the mother, most importantly, in our society is most important. But we also have to remember that our Orthodox friends, when they look at this text, interpret it differently. And their teaching teaches, because I've argued with many of them, that this looks so much like murder that they can't allow it to happen. And that's a dilemma that each of us, I think, has to deal with and understand. Yes, that's a problem, but the damage it does to the woman is greater than anything. And that's my own personal philosophy, allows me to choose, a woman's right than to quote, choose what they call life. It's complicated and not that simple, but you've helped us understand that, at least for our Judaism, it's not wrong.
Right, exactly. And I'd even say much more broadly, in Judaism, it's not wrong. Again, with the caveat that when Judaism says, when our teachers say one thing, you can always find a teacher who says the exact opposite. It's an and not or tradition that we receive. Thank you so much for. Ruth, did you want to share?
I just wanted to ask something quickly, if you could expound, because my question was going to be, our conversation seems pretty clear that it puts the mother or the woman, the pregnant woman first, but how different it is in the different segments of Judaism. So from Richard, I'm understanding that's not accepted in some Orthodox communities.
This is where the complexity of our tradition really comes into play, because I am not exaggerating. I am not being flip when I say, over and over, that when our tradition says one thing, it also generally says the exact opposite. And there are commentaries everywhere, every place of the spectrum in between. So we have guidance from the Torah, which is the home base of our ethic and of our law. And then all of the commentaries that come after that, from the Mishnah and the Talmud, the Gemara, up through legal codes, through the commentaries that begin in ancient times and flow up through today. And there are certainly themes that emerge, themes that see in this passage the equating of the loss of life and monetary punishment, that we should never seek to kill another human being, and then take that to apply either to a person who commits a crime or to a fetus. And then on the other end, that the text is very clear, saying that if someone causes the death of a woman, they, even inadvertently, they must die. Or if there is damage caused to a fetus, if a fetus is destroyed, then that is not the same as a life. It is a fluid-filled sac or a piece of a woman's body. Taking the direct quotes, the direct texts we got from Rabbi Ruttenberg. It is as Richard says, and I appreciate that, it's a complex tradition that we have with complex responses to any contemporary issue. So we can't say that we say one thing, we say all the things. David, I saw you gesturing, and let's get you unmuted. And then this will be our final comment before we head back to our service.
I had a question, and Gail, of course, perked me up, but I had a question. Why is this in Exodus and not Leviticus? And if that means something, is Exodus a story about separation?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, and. Mm-hmm.
Is this somehow, is there something to be learned about its placement? And why is it here and not there?
Sure. The easy answer is the laws, the commandments we get really begin in Exodus, begin at Sinai, the coming to Sinai, which is part of that separation from slavery to freedom and was our portion last week. Leviticus, the English language name for that book, Leviticus relates to the Levites. It relates to the ritual laws. And Exodus has more, just to make a broad generalization, a gross generalization even, Leviticus has more of the ritual laws, and Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy contain more of the ethical laws.
So does this say something, though, about our metaphorical birth from Egypt?
Yes, absolutely. And the fact that this is among the very first verses of this parasha. This is among the beginning of the story as we continue from the base of Mount Sinai. Absolutely, these laws are hugely important to us, but what do they mean? And we each have to figure that out, not just in every generation, but for each one of ourselves. And that's, of course, what we do here together in the Mishkan, in our services together, and in all of our various text studies together. So thank you all. Thank you so much for this. I am going to take us back to our service, but do that through our own experiences of the world, because of course that is central to our being together. Now is a moment that we think about the healing, the comfort, the support that we need and that those we love may need in this world, whether we are facing physical, emotional, mental, spiritual challenges. Now is the time to ask for healing, for comfort and support from each other and from our God. If you are thinking of somebody and would like to share their name aloud, I invite you simply, we are not going to take turns. I just want to, even a cacophony of names, if you just unmute yourself and share the name or names that you are thinking of. So I invite you, and whether that's yourself or somebody else, please share their names aloud.
David Eliyahu ben Batya Elisheva.
Bishop, the family of Suzanne.
Melissa Trachtenberg, my 24-year-old granddaughter, came down with COVID.
Ova Bat Mira.
2 people with COVID. One's in the hospital and one is at home. And Rabbi Tucker, he has an accident. Yeah, Rabbi Tucker.
The names that this community has shared aloud and the names that our wider community you are saying aloud or saying in your hearts, sharing in a Facebook chat, or simply thinking of. We hold them in our hearts as our own as we turn to our Misha Bayrah prayer for healing. Nachamu, the words are on our order of service.
Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yom Elohechem, Nachamu, Nachamu. in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle to take care of one another. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami Yomar Elohechem.
Aleinu L'Shabeach is a prayer that we conclude our services with because it is all about imagining the world that is ahead of us, the world that we can build, the world that will come once we have achieved some kind of peace, some significant kind of understanding, the kind of world that God will want to be in together with us. I believe that my colleague and friend, Chelsea Fuchs, shared this poem with you recently, but I would really love to share it again, a poem by the artist Judy Chicago called The Merger Poem, which really speaks to our themes of Bayom Hahu, on that day of a perfect future that we can create together. If you have the words in front of you, I invite you to read along with me. And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind, and then all people will be gentle, and then all people will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will, and then all will be rich and free and varied, and the greed of some will give way to the needs of the many. And then we will all share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. The final moment of our service before our joyful songs for Shabbat is Kaddish Yatom, our mourners Kaddish. We, as a community, we remember those who have died in this season in years past. We remember those who we take into our hearts with our own. We remember those who have left us recently, and those who simply stay with us whenever they died, whenever we knew them. They stay with us, they remain in our hearts, and we remember them this day. The Central Synagogue community remembers, sorry, my computer is threatening to crash. I'm hoping that it won't. The Central Synagogue community is remembering those who died in the last 30 days from our community. We remember, oh, it's still not loading, my apologies. Here we are. We remember, and if I read a name that is important to you, I invite you to rise if you are able. Eventually, we will all rise together as one community. We are remembering Erwin Martin Ballett, Andy Brooks, Alan Seisler, Francis A. Doyle, Seymour Greer, William Huth, Ted Kirsch, Lori Kogel, Peter Morse, Miriam Molk, Susan Patrikoff, Ralph Strauss, Wendy Weiner, and Daniel Wolf. If you are remembering somebody who died in the past week, if you are observing Shiva, I invite you, if you are in our Zoom community, to unmute yourself and share their name with our community. And if you are joining us on other platforms, I invite you to rise.
Suzanne Dempsey, Claire Pursley, Ed Harris.
And if you are remembering somebody who died in the last month, if you are observing Shloshim, I invite you to rise if you are able, and if you are in our Zoom community, to unmute yourself and share their name.
Marty Ballett.
If you're observing a yahrzeit, or if you're observing Shana, the first year of mourning, I invite you to rise and to share their name in this community.
Beverly Johnson.
David Cantor.
My sister, Suzanne Selby.
If you are observing a yahrzeit on this Shabbat and would like to rise and share their name with our community.
My mother, Louetta Johnson.
Ernie Gilman.
Now, if you are able, I invite you to rise and join our whole community in the words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, that we recite together. Page 294 in our Mishkan Tefillah prayer book. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yiroteh v'yamlich malchoteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayeh dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam olamei almaya, Yitbach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal, shemei dekudasha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imrumav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and be a comfort to all who are bereaved among us. And together we say, amen. If you stood, I invite you to take a seat as we turn to our joyful and celebratory final prayers for Shabbat.
ושמרו לבני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני have a Kiddush cup nearby with wine in it, raise it to the air, and we join together in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
L'chaim.
And if you have challah nearby, raise that up as well, and we join together with the motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. So good to see you. I hope it is a restful, renewing Shabbat and weekend for everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the beautiful service, Sarah and Jenna.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Happy Lunar New Year, Valentine's Day, President's Day.
Happy all the things.
Shabbat shalom.